Chapter 26. They arrived in Osoh Creek mid-afternoon. Cotton fields blanketed the land with white as far as Bach's sight extended, but that was all he could see or hear. Anyone else notice something strange about this place?
Yes, Tovano replied. Where are the people who should be tending these fields? At this time of day, field hands should be working, but we haven't seen another soul for miles.
The answers to those questions came a half-mile down the road. The group encountered 2 dozen or so people carrying children, livestock, and any possessions they could transport by hand. By their homespun clothing, Bach recognized them as serving class, probably the very farmhands he noticed missing. They walked as fast as a group this large could manage. Isabella waved.
"Hello, good people. Is something amiss, and may we help?"
But the group didn't stop to talk.
You and your fancy friends need to turn around, one man said.
Maybe they'll listen to one of their own. Bach climbed off his horse to meet the travelers at eye level. Why? Because of what happened at the Yult family farm? We heard about something strange there, but we know nothing more.
"No, you don't," a woman laughed bitterly. "This land is cursed. We've lost everything save our lives. If we stay here jabbering with you any longer, we'll lose those too."
The farmers hurried on, leaving Bach, Isabella, and company confused and concerned. Unfortunately, the situation became clearer when they cleared the next hill and saw black ash where lush fields should have been. The blight had spread far beyond the Yult farm. Scores of acres, farms, and farmhouses now were dust. An invisible fist slammed into Bach's midsection. He rubbed his eyes in a failed effort to blot out the emptiness before him. All those farms. They weren't all empty when the wave of destruction hit. I would bet on it. By the Exalted One, Aventil whispered. Isabella dismounted. Her hands shook, but she took command.
"Come, we have no time to waste. Bok, begin your assessments. Tovano and Kotarian, the three of us will prepare further spells depending on his findings. Aventil, help Corrigan and Wingate with the horses and return here as soon as you can."
The others quickly followed her lead, heads down to the devastation in front of them. Kotarian's voice cracked.
I never imagined it would be this bad.
No one else spoke, but they scrambled into action. With shaky hands, Bach handed Becky's reins to Aventil. His chest drew tight. If we can't learn the truth about the Blight here and now, it may be too late for anyone else to do so. Too late for my family, too. Bach unpacked his healer's bag on a patch of unaffected ground. Stay back. We don't know if it may still be dangerous. Aventil crossed his arms. How do we know this Blight won't come back while we're here?
We do not, Isabella replied. So we must move quickly. Bok, your talents as a healer of this land will guide us as we cycle back through the devastation done here.
I will try. Despite his lingering questions about Isabella's conversation with Tovano, her supportive words swelled his heart. He donned his heavy riding gloves for protection, pulled a strand of sage out of his bag, and scattered it across the nearest piece of the blighted soil. After a deep breath, Bach began his incantations. When working with farmers, one of Bach's folk magic spells assessed the soil to determine how it had changed over time. The answers helped him decide how best to replenish and heal the land. But it was a tricky process, and the damage he examined here was far more extensive and mysterious than flooding or locusts or any of the other natural ills he normally encountered. Bach closed his eyes and listened for the folk magic to respond. He felt the spell flow out of his hands, through the air and across the ground in front of him. Like fingers, the magic sifted through the ruined soil, probing it. The rest of the party undoubtedly watched him intently, but he forced that uncomfortable thought out of his mind and focused on the spell. One lapse in concentration, and it could be ruined. He remembered Weni Khan's guidance as she trained him in the art of folk magic. Waggling a wrinkled finger, she said,
The magic knows the answer, Bok, but you have to give it time to speak.
Bok heeded that wisdom, and the folk magic responded with the answers he needed. He stood and dusted off his gloves. One bit of good news. The blackened soil is no longer destructive and is safe to the touch. Whatever evil caused this devastation has passed. Isabella exhaled.
Do you know the cause of this blight?
No, but I know what didn't cause it. No fire caused this, nor is it the result of any poison or insect or anything else occurring in nature. That leaves one possibility.
Magic.
Isabella nodded, Bok having confirmed her long-standing suspicions.
Tovano, Kotarian, join me and see if we can determine its origin.
The three sorcerers formed a triangle around the patch of ground Bok had probed. Each of the three then began an incantation to reveal the spell signature cast on the blighted ground. Tovano had described a spell signature to Bok as being as unique as any fingerprint. Find that spell signature, and you will reveal its caster. 3 circles of dark blue light appeared on the ground, as if cast by invisible candles. The 3 spellcasters each stepped into one of the circles. Runes and letters appeared in the light, but no one untrained in high magic. They appeared to be simply gibberish. Thanks to the rudimentary training Tovano had given him, Bok spotted an occasional pattern in the marks. However, the spell was far too complex, and its revelations coming too fast for him to make sense of it. So he waited. Well, his spell had taken 30 minutes at most. Isabella, Kotarian, and Tovano continued their magical inquiry for 1 hour. Then another. They remained within the circles of blue light, unaware of anything going on outside of its diameter, unable to communicate with their colleagues in any way.
This is the downside to having a sorcerer for a girlfriend, Aventil nudged Bok's shoulder. You spend a lot of your time doing nothing while they look at light shows.
He pulled some bread and cheese from the basket Umra had prepared that morning and sat cross-legged on the black ground.
And I seem to do a lot of nothing.
Bok's attention focused on Corrigan, however. The Guardian had said little in the past few hours. Bok noticed the man's gait grew increasingly shaky and his face wan. Let me check your wounds. Bok took his healer's bag and approached the trembling Guardian. Corrigan attempted to bake off, but Bok insisted he recline on the ground for an examination. He placed his hand on the man's forehead, and it was hot to the touch. When he unwrapped Corrigan's bandages, Bok recoiled at how puffy and red his shoulder had become. He pressed his knees together while he regained his composure. Bok cleaned the wound, administered a poultice, and wrapped it again. But my skills as a healer mean little if my patient won't rest. Wingate approached once Corrigan had drifted off into a light sleep, aided by a double dose of Bok's Yorka root.
How is he doing? And please, be truthful.
Bok rubbed his tired eyes. Most men would not be able to stand. I have no idea how he keeps going. His wound is infected. Still, I believe he can recover if we can get him off the trail and into a bed for a few weeks.
That will not happen until the mission is complete, Wingate offered. But I will take care of him the rest of the way. And Bok, thank you.
Halfway into their 3rd hour of scrying, Tovano ceased his spell, prompting Isabella and Kotarian to do the same. The blue lights blinked off, taking with them the cryptic messages that the sorcerers had been decoding. Craning their necks, Bok and Aventil waited for their friend's report. Isabella panted and hunched over to catch her breath. Black dust stained her pant legs and dulled the sheen of her riding boots.
As expected, the spell signature of the sorcerer, or sorcerers, behind the blight was shrouded by a second spell.
Bok handed her a water jug. She knelt and took a long drink before continuing.
But Tovano guided Kotarian and me in unraveling the camouflaging spell. Once we did, We found the true author of the Blight.
The Mosorks,
Kotarian sneered.
more specifically, an old Mosork sorcerer named Wunebo Pran.
Aventil nodded. They have long wanted to avenge their crushing defeat at Imarina's hands 300 years past. But the Mosork Empire doesn't have the magical capabilities to launch a large-scale attack.
Wunebo Pran is regarded as a competent enough sorcerer for a Mosork,
Kotarian said.
But I wouldn't have thought him capable of high magic of this magnitude.
Nor would I. Isabella shook her head. Truth be told, I would not think even the most powerful sorcerer could harness these forces. Something does not feel right about this result. Almost like the answer was too easy to come by. I fear we are being led astray.
Kotarian threw his hands above his head.
By Treganian's turgid torment! Your father sent you to get an answer about this blight, but you didn't get the answer you wanted. So now, you don't want to accept it? I regret my bluntness, your majesty. However, I must say that may be how things work in the royal palace, but in the house of magic.
Bach stepped between Kotarian and the princess.
Trust your instincts, Isabella. He knew little of high magic, and even less about the centuries-old tensions between the crown and the house of magic. But he trusted Isabella's judgment. If she had doubts, they should be explored. Aventil put his arm around her shoulder. Bach's right. Trust yourself, my love. And Kotarian, by the Exalted One, must you always be so insufferable? He continued. The real question, I suppose, is how do you know for sure? If the spell you just cast didn't give you the right answer, and if Bach's prodding and poking didn't unearth the truth, what else can we do? Isabella stood back up. I have one idea. When I was a girl, I used to watch my mother paint in our garden. She could sit at her easel for hours. Sometimes she would start over, covering one painting with a fresh layer of paint to create a new picture. But in certain spots, if you scratched at the outer layer of paint, you still could see a vague outline of the original work. Expelling a deep breath, she dusted off her pants. I say we keep going. Push past the spell signature we unlocked. It will not be easy, and we may find nothing. But the truth is too important.
This is absurd,
Kotarian moaned.
All three of us arrived at the same answer, including me. There is no need for us to continue.
Well, no one said you had to be a part of it, Grey Jacket, Aventil snapped. You can pout, while Isabella and Tovano do the work. Tovano nodded in agreement.
Your Majesty, what you say makes a great deal of sense. Any sorcerer powerful enough to create such a force may be skilled enough to create such a sophisticated falsehood. But such an exercise in collaborative magic will require precision, care, patience, not raw mystical power. We must disrupt the enchanted soil as little as possible, slowly peeling back the events of recent weeks. The forces who cast this spell did so consciously to hide their tracks, and we must be even more deliberate in uncovering them.
Kotarian raised his hand above his head.
You aren't restarting this spell without me. By Subvanian's subtle scream, you need my expertise if you have any hope of success. Just give me a moment, and the house's shining light once will again lead the way.
Isabella finished her water and grinned. Indeed, my friend. Lead on. After a short rest, the trio recast their discovery spell.
They had to start over from the beginning, taking the same care as before to ensure the incantation's path remained on course. The conjuring went on for hours, until deep into the night. Bach wished he had the knowledge and training to help. His companions' heads drooped and shoulders slumped within the greenish circles of eldritch light. But he could do nothing for his exhausted friends, except wait and watch. The landscape provided little stimulation, just an ocean of dark ash that ended at the edge of a nearby forest. Bach missed the normal sounds of birds chirping and small animals rooting for food. He looked at the pine trees 100 yards away or so. The shift from black to green, death to life, sent a shiver down the back of Bach's neck. He, Aventil, Corrigan, and Wingate maintained a vigil surrounding the three sorcerers, protecting them from outside harm and awaiting some definitive answers as to what entity brought them to Osoh Creek. Those answers came a couple of hours before daybreak. The three spells ended almost simultaneously. Tovano collapsed to his knees, kicking up a cloud of black ash around him. Wingate rushed to give the man water. Kotarian staggered off into the dark field, his eyes glazed over. He clutched his stomach as though he might vomit. Isabella stood in place, neither speaking nor moving. Her dust-streaked face didn't change expression.
My sweet, what happened? What did you learn?
Aventil put his arm around her, and she leaned into the tall noble. A single sob escaped her throat, but her eyes were too dry for tears.
A Mosork sorcerer did not cause the blight. This atrocity was a house of magic spell,
she whispered in a parched, raw voice.
Salandrian cast the blight.